screen is shared with you all. The first slide.
It'd probably be good to mute Dwinwen if you can.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I should have thought.
Great, thanks.
And what I'd like to talk to just briefly today, the second stage of the RIBA workshops that we're doing. And this week we're going to cover the first two stages, strategic definition and preparation and brief. We had an introduction last week, and these two particular stages relate to the two E's in the Communities Creating Homes programme, which is engage and explore. And DTA at the bottom of the slide help us with the explore. And Nicola gives her apologies today. So I'd just like to move through. So the first stage is like visioning. It outlines a project brief and outlines the defining criteria of your project, what you really want. And Maggie, you were talking about an architectural practice who want to have very energy efficient designs. It's that sort of high level ambition. It's pre-appointment. You won't actually enter into a contract with an architect. You may want to interview a couple of architects to see which one suits what you want to achieve as a vision, and ideally their vision should align with your vision, so you're all singing from the same hymn sheets. Different architects have different approaches to things, and each architect can have a different view within the practice, if it's larger than a sole practitioner, of how they can work with you. So we've got to set the tone of your project, and what the outcome is, what's the end part of it going to be? What are you looking at in terms of cost, size, and time frame? Make an assessment of what you actually want to achieve. Is it going to be a new build site? Are you going to refurbish a property? Mixture of those. How does it fit into local planning policy and context? And establish a program. Is it going to be 1-2 years? Is it going to be quicker than that? Or most developments are longer. You could be talking 5 years from inception all the way through. So happy with that, I'll move on. So you develop a brief, the community-led housing group. It could just be a few people, but if you've got residents involved, then they can have a say in it. It's client-led, and you also set out what your risk, what you're prepared to, how you want to move it forward. And it might not be the answer. It may be look at another site, and as I say, it could take a while to get through this, and the designers can contribute, give their ideas to match what your vision says. And sustainability. Affordable housing has to be zero carbon by 2030, and new ones before that date. So you've got to bear that in mind, or you may want it from day one, so you don't have to retrofit. And what I say is that the architect may advise you that you don't need to get an architect involved, which is a bit strange, but particularly a refurb project, and I'll show you some slides in a minute of a refurb co-op, where I'm sure architects weren't involved. And then you appoint the architect at the end of stage 0. So let's move on. Here is a refurbishment scheme. This is in Gyllydeg on the Swansea Road coming out of Merthyr. It was a block of flats that had been refurbished once by Merthyr Valleys Homes, which is a multi-stakeholder housing co-op in itself. And it was going to cost 80,000 to demolish the block. And for 100,000, they could put a new roof on it and then encourage the community to gift things to it. So they had the idea that they would refurbish it to a housing co-op, gift it to the residents and get prudential borrowing from Merthyr Town and County Borough Council to refurbish it. And that's their vision. It's one side of the valley. It looks over to Cyfarthfa Castle, just hidden in the trees down the bottom there. It was organic, local manufacturer gave them windows. They got kitchen units from a building supplier. And this lady is one of the first people to move in. They let it on Zoopla. They didn't go off their housing list, and it is 2-bed, and they pay intermediate rent, and the occupancy is better than the local stock in the area. So that was their vision, and it was achieved using their own labour force within Merthyr Valleys Homes, and a surveyor going out preparing a schedule of works and working it that way. So no architect involved there. So
Dave,
yeah.
Sorry to cut across.
Yeah, I'm happy to have questions.
Was there any RSL's involvement in this?
The RSL was Merthyr Valleys Homes, Arbon. It's the Merthyr Valleys Council stock transfer,
right,
to it wasn't quite in community mutual, but it was to a community-led housing association that converted to a multi-stakeholder co-op. They have residents in the main control tenants, staff can be on the board, and volunteers from the wider community. So it is quite an individual. And I'm just letting Liz Mears in, and if you'll bear with me for Liz, I will go back and just look at the 2 refurb slides. Liz, I don't know whether you're on mute and have joined us.
Okay, I think I'm okay now.
Hi, Liz.
Hi.
We've just gone through the first stage, and just at the end of it, and I was saying that here's an example of a refurbishment project in Merthyr, Tarfechan, where the local housing association had a property that was going to be demolished for 80,000, whereas if they put a roof on it, they could, for 100,000, they could get gifts from the local community in terms of windows, use their own labour, kitchen units from a builder's merchant, and they had a vision to refurbish it, and this is what it looks like. So at the other side of the valley to Cyfarthfa Castle, and it has better occupancy levels than the general stock in the area, and it would just be a surveyor and a workforce and residents who were found on Zoopla to come, and apologies, as foot jumped, to live in there. So you wanted to see some refurb models last week, but I have another one at the end, Liz. So we'll move on to. But any questions, please put your hand up, or just, there's only 8 of us on here, I think, anyway. So so the first stage, you appoint an argument, you agree a brief and what are the project objectives, what's the business case, how we're going to fund it, feasibility studies, right, structural condition of the block, ground surveys, ecological surveys, give sustainability checkpoints so that you meet your carbon or zero carbon that you've set out. Pre-planning discussions with the local authority. I can't stress how important this is, not only for planning, but also for housing need. And it's important to have them on board. That particular refurb project, they had prudential borrowing from the local council. So they were on board, it met their targets. And the idea is to get a project team together and defining the roles and who does what within that team. So again, just to summarize it, going into details in the RIBA plan, and Claire sent you around the full link to it. There's different responsibilities at each stage for different person within the team. You've got to check hidden services with the statutory undertakings. In an existing building, there might be asbestos. And basically, can it meet what you want to set out? And those are the outputs that are there. The views are particularly from a structural or civil engineering. Will it stand up? Is the building sound? Is the ground strong enough? But there are, you may have other specialists involved if you want to achieve different things. So having been engaged to think freely at stage O, you're now trying to pin things down to what you want to do, and the firmer you can get early on, the easier it is. It gets more difficult to change, and I'll explain next time about, you've got to have a cut-off date. The plan of work has been 20, 30 years or longer, different ones, but now it runs on a software package on your laptop, and you might like to think whether you want to do that, or is it just going to be a paper documentation with your architect. That's very rare now. And again, I'll explain about it's not necessarily just about plans. If you want 3-dimensional works and virtual tours, you need the package to be able to do that. And this is the slide when we talk about that. It's called BIM, Building Information Modeling. It is computer-based, and you need your contractors to be computer-based. There's no point in you producing something that's all on a spreadsheet and people can link in if your contractor can't access it. But it's helpful for them ordering materials and updating on progress. So if you want to walk through to see what your design was going to be like, I won't be standing up at a physical meeting explaining what a scheme is and having a drawing on the wall behind me. Meetings are going to be more remote, I think, going forward, certainly in the short term. So it's important that you decide how you want to do it. Is it just going to be sketches and drawings, or is it going to be computer? Maybe some smaller schemes. It's not going to be justifying doing that work, but it's crucial that you get that right at the early stage. And point a building contractor. They'll be go through a tender process, and there'll be a principal designer, which is a statutory role, and that could be the architect, or it could be somebody else, a project manager within the team, and it's covered in the construction and design management regulations. CDM. It's not Cadbury's Dairy Milk chocolate, which I thought it was at one time, but it's about health and safety and having a plan at the end to maintain it properly. No point in designing something and it's unsafe to maintain. You know, the Shard building in London, pointy glass thing, it has to be maintained for 150 years. There's no point in having people falling off cleaning the glass. So you've got to get it right for health and safety, obviously in the design, construction on site, and those afterwards maintaining it. And obviously the residents living in the property, it's got to be safe for them so they get safe access to maintain the windows, to maintain in the Shard. I'm sure they have gantries coming down. They don't have people going into the offices, opening a window and cleaning the glass. Any queries on that? So just some slides to make you think and discuss the options that are available. And Alan will recognize these, and these are two designs for a scheme in Holland, Alan. And one layout on the left shows a co-housing design with houses around a shared unit, and the other one a more standard unit, developer-led, with individual houses. So you can see that the fundamental decision that you make in stages 1 or 0 and 1 as to what you want influence how the scheme goes forward. What was the name of the scheme, Alan? You're on.
Hi, yes. I was just trying to remember, actually. I think it's in Belgium.
Belgium, my mistake.
I can look it up now and pop it in the chat. But yeah, it's a co-house.
Yeah, so there's fundamental differences there. And if we look at the next slide, these are slides, all the drawings I'm showing throughout the whole thing are community-led or cooperative housing schemes in Wales that have, you know, been designed or developed or moved on. These two drawings are one for the one on the left for a co-housing scheme in Cardiff, in Ely, where Home Farm Housing Co-op is. They had two accesses there with car parking and housing, then a central community facility, and some of the homes were going to be self-build or full ownership, and others were going to be rented. And there was a link across the Ely to the paper mill development that's there, for those of you who know, excuse me, know Cardiff. The other one on the right is the one that's actually built. It was actually a single cul-de-sac, less road, and clusters of homes.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. And you know, a block of flats, a block of flats at the back, but they didn't have any communal space. And this was set up as a co-op, but it is now reverted back to general needs. Maybe because there wasn't a communal facility to hold it all together. Separate blocks of flat, and 6 people off the top of the waiting list came in there. They didn't have any training, and it was difficult to integrate. So we learned a lot of lessons by it, and you know, sometimes in the design, there's some elevations of it, very much garden village style, sloping porches, archway through to the back. There's some allotments behind there. there's a firm of architects in Cardiff, and they did the two designs. So I was saying that an architect can do different designs on the same site, either co-housing or traditional. No more photos of that one. And again, to finish on a refurb, unless there are any questions on home farm. Casey, you're familiar with it, aren't you?
I am indeed, and I do think that the sort of design is really fundamental to, you know, especially when you're talking about community-led housing, having that communal space for people to gather and meet, and, you know, whether it's meetings for co-op business or, you know, sort of official business, or just, you know, social gatherings. I think that can make or break a community, essentially. Yeah,
you know, even just a notice board, or I'll be showing Loftus Village later on where they've just got a garage or two garages. It's a focal point. You might not have seen that initial layout, Casey, because it came after you came. I'm not sure. I dug it up from somewhere. Interesting, there used to be a Roman villa on the allotments adjacent to this, so people have been living in this area for 2,000 years. So we get things right, don't we, sometimes? Just to finish on a refurb in Garndyffordd by Bronavon, which is another community mutual stock transfer from Torfaen Borough Council to Bronavon. Set up 25 years ago, I think they've been going, about the same time as Merthyr Valley's Homes. There were 3 blocks of flats on the site. They demolished 2, and this was one of the blocks which had been converted into a police station and an area housing office. And you can see how welcoming it was to the community, and they did have to have shutters on the lower floors. I'm not quite sure what it says there. And it had been stripped out, and the local railings on the grills on the windows. The local community wanted to do something with it to serve young homeless in the area, or sofa surfers. They were sleeping in, one resident was sleeping in the car park down in Cumbran. Others were just hopping from people's sofa. And they had a vision to get the local and a project owned 2 feet with the youth people learning skills on the job, plastering electricians. Again, they got gifted windows from building constructors that people came and helped do the rendering. Converted into 8 flats, each one with its own front door, different coloured suites. This one was all red. They put white goods in there for them, and people were very happy. They built another 2 modular homes adjacent to it, and they want to incorporate them into I say housing co-op. They use the cooperative rules in the management committee. They're not fully incorporated, and they have had some tenancy issues within the young block, within the block with the youngsters after a while. These things happen, so they want to reinstate it back up as a community-led organisation using cooperative rules. So that's some ideas of how new build and refurb can be done at the early stages, the stages 0 and 1 of the RIBA, and then the engage and explore stage of our Communities Creating Homes programme. And this particular scheme they believed in investing in the young people and letting them thinking outside the box, and this is what they come up to. And again, like I said last time, it's a very different skill setting up a co-op and running a co-op. People move on, and Liz, you will know, people in Hay did the better market, they wanted to do something else, and it's about having succession and different skills as it moves forward through. So any particular questions on this lovely afternoon, or do we want me to go back to anything?
I had a quick thought, Dave, just really general, and I don't know, it might be a bit of a stupid question, but just thinking about sort of you talking about the digital tech that architects now use and all of the 3D modeling, how many builders and contractors have the resources to work on those sort of digital platforms? Because obviously we're in very short supply of builders anyway, but are there many out there that tend to use these tools?
It's a good question. The larger ones, or medium to larger ones, which will generally be on housing associations select lists or constructor lists, will have it. But the small SME and jobbing builder that a housing co-op may want to work with won't have it.
Yeah.
You could pay somebody else to do a or based on your drawings. If it's drawn on AutoCAD or another system, there are people who could create virtual presentations from that. But it's a good point. The other, I mean, just talking about another scheme in Solver that have just appointed a firm of architects, Pentan Architects in Cardiff, to design up their 18 homes in Solver. I'm sure that they will have the ability to do it and involve the community. And they didn't use the local housing association select list. It's ATEB, it was Pembrokeshire Homes. And that they interviewed a sole architect who was quite old fashioned and said, I'll do the drawings and I'll tell you what you want, and that's what you'll get. It's very didactic, and some people like that approach. They don't have to make the decision, but others want it to be more involved and more participative. And I'm sure Pentan will be doing, because they're based in Cardiff, and it'll be easier for them to project images down to Solver, West Wales, and go down every week for physical meetings.
Yeah.
But these are one of the things you've got to think early on. What do you want? How is it going to move forward? Are we going to get back to face-to-face personal meetings? I mean, a lot of community-led organisations want to get back together, and that's how they're going to go forward. That's what they're doing it for.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether Maggie or Hope have any ideas. How does it'll be Stonewater? How does Stonewater do it, Hope?
To be honest,
Sorry, I
I'm
missed the
not
question.
absolutely sure. So I'm in sort of operations at the moment, dealing with sort of responsive repairs, but I'd be quite interested in the development side of things. So I'm hoping to get involved in some more projects as my sort of graduate job goes through.
Sorry, Alan, what was the question there? I missed it.
Yeah, Maggie, is it?
Yes.
I asked Hope, who works for a large housing association, Stonewater, in England, what their approach is. I mean, I think Stonewater is a large housing association in England that took over Jeffson Housing, which was based in Leamington Spa, and they had a small housing association in the Marches, Leominster, who did originally have some properties in Wales. They could build either side of the border. But the fact that they had to translate things for people in Wales sort of made them not cost effective. So they tried, and I think that the development department for Stonewater is down in Portsmouth. So how they deal with designing 2 bungalows in Shobden on the Welsh border from down in Portsmouth. And they've got some offices in Hereford, I think, haven't they? But it's done remotely, and it must be all virtual. And certainly repairs can be done virtual. You can have a click menu on a screen, and people can pick, and they don't even have to talk to anybody to diagnose it.
Can I just ask how many of the, if you're aware of the focus of housing associations on carbon retrofitting? They're interested in that. I haven't found it in Manchester. The housing association where I am doesn't seem to be doing anything with it at all.
In Wales, we've got an obligation to get all affordable housing stock to zero carbon by 2035, I think it is, Alan. And there is a retrofit program going around that some housing associations have signed up to. And I think we've got somebody coming to talk at our next but one network event about retrofit. I don't know, say a bit more, Alan.
Yeah, it's optimized retrofit, the program, and at the moment it's looking at creating kind of leader projects in Wales, specifically to explore the long-term benefits of different types of insulation programs. So they are, at the moment, they're just dealing with housing associations, and they're, you know, working with partners and installing insulation measures in different houses in different ways, I think, and then to try and establish the best one or ones to move forward with. And they're looking to extend that to private homeowners, and we've been having conversations with them around community-led housing and existing housing co-ops, because lots of existing housing co-ops are in quite inefficient, badly insulated housing, and need help to improve them. So we're hoping that we will find some housing co-ops that's a really good fit for optimized retrofit, and they'll act as a guinea pig, if you like, and they'll monitor that insulation work over time and the improvements that's generated for the different communities. So that's the program leader of that project is Alan Watkins, who's going to speak with us in the June network, which is on June the 17th. And we'll also have 2 speakers from Nest, which again is a Wales-based project to support people who have poor insulation and need new boilers and so on and so forth. And we've recently been able to extend that support to housing co-ops, which is really good news. So we're going to be kind of celebrating that and talking to those projects in the June network, but not the May.
I must admit, I've not spoken to the local housing association for a couple of years now. But they were, because they controlled a lot of properties, they had their own repair team and were interested in doing private properties, but no focus on insulation particularly. That's the problem. No,
I think with climate change, climate emergency, it is becoming more pressing now.
It's speeding up. A lot of lip service,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being cynical about it, but it costs landlords to put insulation in and upgrade the fabric, and it doesn't benefit them directly. No, it does improve the life of the tenants, and they've got affordable warmth, and it does actually benefit the landlord in that the property is being better insulated, is better in terms of maintenance, is not condensation or whatever. And Liz has made a point in the chat about changing the layout and putting different windows in. Obviously, you would need a structural engineer or a surveyor to check that you're not knocking down a load-bearing wall. And it sometimes people knock through, and then another tenant wants to put the wall back up because they've got kids that want to do their homework. I know you've got a child, Liz, and they need some space of their own. If they're all in one big room, maybe they don't like it. Maybe your daughter does. I don't know. I mean, I suppose flexibility within a design. You could have partitions that could put up and be put down. You have temporary.
Yeah.
It's about making the design flexible. That you could put an extra bit on, or you could put a partition up, or you could knock it down. And Lifetime Homes and having a lift to go up through to get to the bedroom, or wide enough stairs for a stair lift. It's about being flexible in the design at the very outset. A building will be there for 120 years or more. Alan and I were looking at some houses in Machynlleth that were built 110 years ago, Alan?
Yeah, it was 1920s, wasn't it? The Garden Village.
100 years ago, yeah.
My house was built 1856, so try and get that.
Yeah.
And
I think mine's only about 20 or 30 years old. But families have changed, haven't they? And the way we live changed. And
and probably, a property 20, 30 years ago is less flexible than something older, over 100 years ago. The space standards were bigger. I don't know where you live, Liz, but maybe the long-term design, it was very short-term design, and things will be designed now with offices for working from home, whether they'll scrap the bedroom tax, so you can live with an occupied room and use that as a study for homework or working from home.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I think there's been a shift with working, hasn't there? So, and a lot of people just don't have the space to do it, do they? So,
it's about getting that design right at the very, very beginning, the inception and the very first stage of it. Long life, loose fit. It isn't, the home isn't going to be there just for 20 years. It's going to be there for 120 years.
I take it you're familiar with Ouch, the older women's co-housing group in London.
We do know Ouch, and Alan, I think you've visited them, haven't you?
Right, can I just finish?
I have, yeah.
About 3 years ago, no, probably about 8 years ago, they presented along with a young man who was presenting self-build, and a lady who was building properties with virtually just 2 rooms inside. But if you got involved at that point, you could actually make it into a 4-bedroom. In other words, you finished off the inside yourself. Are you familiar with that setup? I've forgotten what they were called.
There's a group in Bristol that does that, isn't there?
Yeah, part build. It's called Self Finish, I think, Alan.
Yeah, the project was called The Yard in Bristol, and quite a few of their buildings were self finish.
It might have been. It's just that I mentioned the Ouch because they were all presenting at the same event.
Yeah.
No, and another question from Liz, thanks, is about solar and wind power. Yes, that is very much part of it, but the first bit is getting it's called fabric first, getting the structure right in terms of construction and insulation, so that and passive house is possibly with less ventilation, although with COVID you need more ventilation. It's a difficult one to balance. And then you can augment it with solar and wind. and normally a windmill would be distant from the house. If it's stuck on the roof, you get noise, vibration noise from it. If it's whirring in the night, people switch off their extract fans in the bathroom in the night because they can hear a little electric fan buzzing. So the advantage of community-led housing is that you can design the site and you can put solar panels on the south facing homes, but the whole neighborhood can benefit from those solar panels, not just those with a south facing roof. The scheme in Cardiff, Ely Home Farm, they actually had the electricity light in the stairwells in the common parts in the flats, and the electricity, the electric was shared between all residents who use the common parts. Whereas if it's just one individual property, some properties will benefit from it and others might not. So it's best to do it collectively in our minds. Anyway, I think we've had a good session chat, unless anybody else has got something else, and we can move on to the next stage next week, because it's just short, sharp bites. Thanks for making the commitment on a lovely Thursday afternoon.
Before you go, Dave, if I could just have a quick chat about refurbs again. Conscious that in many areas there aren't any opportunities to build any more houses, and refurbishment is probably maybe the only option, or knocking down and rebuilding. Thinking about empty chapels and churches and the ilk, has there been any further discussions? I know there was a meeting yesterday, I believe, or the day before, about using churches and chapels. Has there any discussion been with the Wales Co-op Centre about it or not?
I attended the event, Darwin. Yeah, and I will send you details of it, and they're looking for a panel or a contractor or organisation to work in partnership with people across Wales to deliver a programme. And they've had some achievements already. Yeah. And they often, the churches are very central to the community, and a lot of housing associations were set up around churches. Family housing is the Roman Catholic churches. English churches was well, as its name sounds, English church, I think it was Church of England, and almshouses. So yeah, there's most of their properties are listed buildings. So yeah, I'll send you details of that.
Thank you.
We have had conversations with the Faith and Affordable Housing Project back before the pandemic now, just talking about, because I think traditionally they worked with housing associations to be able to provide the affordable housing. But I think from when we spoke to them, they'd be well up for community-led groups getting involved in these projects. I think it's just a case of having the right property with a community group in place. But I don't think that they're against community-led options, although they have had a change in personnel since we last spoke to them. So we should get back in touch with them and sort of take the discussions further.
We will be in touch with them, and I'm speaking with CCH, Community Housing Cymru, Clarissa, and Stuart Ropke's on the panel for the Faith in Housing or Housing Justice. Where organisations don't have the community building capacity, Group Cynefin, might have that capacity and want to do their engagement themselves in North Wales, but other organisations may want to work in partnership with us to lead with the community. Yeah, and sometimes to have an intermediary between the community and the housing association that is unbiased, it can broker a deal, as you well know, as the rural housing enablers did.
Yeah.
So you're bipartisan, aren't you, or impartial? So yeah, I'll send you that. Anyway,
we've got a place just down the road from me, which is it's right next door to the Catholic church, but it was I think it used to be a vicarage, and it's been empty for so long, and the community are quite kind of annoyed that it's just falling apart now. It'd be nice to be able to find out if we can do anything with it. So I don't think.
Is that in Hay or Telgarth, Liz?
That's in Hay, yeah.
In Hay.
I know there's a few empty chapels and things, but this is actually a house, you know.
Yeah, no,
I don't know
it's worth
quite how we look
further.
into that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's worth exploring for them, and I think it's the housing justice or faith in affordable housing is a good starting point, just to gauge their experience and their involvement with the Church in Wales or the other denominations, isn't it?
yeah.
No, that's useful, Liz. We'll try and find out more about that, or if you find out more about it, let us know.
Yeah, they might have plans for it, but it'd be interesting to try and find out if anything's possible.
Yeah, and work with the community. There still is a core in Hay that want to do some community-led housing, I believe.
Yeah.
And as the Archbishop is John Davies, who's just up the road from you in Brecon, then maybe worth having a word with him, as he was in the housing justice panel, I think yesterday, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. His first parish was in Newport, and they converted to a church there, so he knows it, and he is very passionate about it, and I think he will drive it forward. So they'll be looking. I think they got 200 in the pipeline, and they want to get to 1,000 units. So it would be good to have more schemes, Liz.
And that's housing justice and faith in housing. Did you say?
Faith in housing. Yeah, I'll send you a link.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks all.
Thank you, Dave.
Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Alan.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Ta-ra.
Stop sharing.